Hi, we are team number 6 and we're going to talk about the activity for the lexical approach. We are Cecilia Becerra, Isa Elizalde, and Ana Beatriz. So let's begin.
Theory of language. The lexical approach views language as a system of structurally related elements for the coding of meaning, in particular to multi-word lexical units or chunks that are learned and used as single items formed by collocations and fixed phrases. These play a central role in learning and communication. The lexical approach holds that chunks contribute to fluent speech and that are of significance above language acquisition. Theory of learning. Language production is the product of previously met examples, not formal rules. Learning of chunks is assumed to take place both through incidental learning and through direct instruction. Their goal is that chunks that are noticed and learning must then adequately entrench in the learner's long-term memory, and it is facilitated in a number of ways, such as through noticing, through cognitive processing, through exposure, and through comparison with L1.
Above the previously exposed, we have decided to implement an activity alluding to the lexical approach with the aim of having the opportunity of comprehending what it's like to apply the concepts and ideas already stated in this presentation in a real life classroom, along with a group of scholars. The aspects to be seen in this activity are the objectives and goals from the teacher and learner while performing this exercise, as well as specific explanations concerning the utilization of materials and examples in order to project meaningful results in front of each learner. Considering the expressed, we can begin. The lexical approach states clearly that language acquisition happens through acquiring the chunks or collocations of a language. Learning a language is not about rules, but rather about acquiring enough and significant examples from which the learner can make generalizations. As such, a student should focus learning various combinations of word chunks. For example, a child will eventually learn that good morning is a greeting for a specific time of day. Learners and teachers' objectives regarding this activity. The lexical approach is primarily an approach for developing autonomous learning. For that reason, the teacher's objective is to provide an environment in which the student can count on the capability of managing their own learning. On the other hand, learners have the objective of assuming the role of analyzers in concordance with real life language samples based on their own explanations. Teacher's task number 1. The instructor will read through this unit of classroom materials as if he or she was preparing to use them for a group of high, intermediates to advanced learners. Later on, the instructor will decide how it would be necessary to adapt the materials. Teacher's task number 2. If appropriate, the teacher will adapt and implement these materials with the students. After using them, it is crucial for the educator to think about the following questions. Which goals do I think the materials achieved or failed to achieve? Did I notice students doing anything differently with these materials than with others I have been using? Did I, as a teacher, do anything differently using these materials? Did my students have a positive, negative, or indifferent reaction to the materials? General goals. The general goals of this activity are developing students' reading skills as well as increasing students' store of lexical chunks. However, this presentation would not be complete if we did not mention what the more specific goals alluding to this activity are. Having said that, we have goal number 1, motivating students to read by providing text with universally engaging themes, providing activities that allow students to personalize text, and also encouraging meaningful and authentic initial reactions to text. Goal number 2, to raise student awareness of the idea of lexical chunking by directing scholars' attention to specific lexical chunks already encountered in the text, and therefore helping learners to analyze the different means of lexical chunks. And last, but definitely not least, we have goal number 3, to help students develop skills for independent learning by providing opportunities to experience lexical chunks in reliable text, encouraging scholars to analyze, generalize, research, and experiment with lexical chunks, as well as providing learners with opportunities to discover chunks for themselves.
So, what is the activity about? As a team, we decided to use an activity that can be applied for the lexical approach and for us to understand it better. So, this activity consists of different steps that we're gonna see in the next slide and finding out different lexical chunks and their meaning. So, let's continue. So, what is a lexical chunk? In order to complete the activity, we have to understand the concept of a lexical chunk. A lexical chunk is a group of words that are commonly found together. This means that these are phrases that they are used the same in different contexts, and these are words that usually, when they come together, they mean something specifically, and when they are apart, they mean something very different. Because these are expressions that are used in the daily life of the people that speak the language that we're learning. And of course, they may exist in our own language too. So here we have some examples such as good morning, nice to see you, what's the time? As you can notice, these are groups of words that have some meaning. But if you separate them, like good morning, you say good or morning, they will not have a meaning on their own for expressing the thing that you would like to express. This is why this is vocabulary. So this is the concept of lexical chunk in general and very quickly. So we jump to the procedure. And this activity consists on reading the story that we can see on the screen and carefully analyzing it, comprehending it, and relating the concept because we're gonna need this knowledge for later on the activity. The activity is very short and it's very easy, but it's important to go through this story well and analyzing it. So uh, let's see the next slide. So next we have the activity. After reading the previous story, you have to look at the lexical chunks that are listed down below and all the expressions from the story. Obviously, all they are taken from the story every day. After that, you have to write an equivalent in your own language for each lexical chunk, and also identify if these chunks are in your language or if they exist in your language too. Not the translation, but the expression itself. Then, after recognizing this, you have to tell a partner about the lexical chunks in your own language. You have to understand these lexical chunks and discuss it with your partner. Also listening to what your partner has to say. After that, you have to discuss the whole um, the whole reading and discuss it with your partner.
In conclusion, the lexical approach can be summarized in a few words. Language consists not of traditional grammar and vocabulary, but often of multi-word prefabricated chunks. Basically, is a way of analyzing and teaching language based on the idea that it is made up of lexical units rather than grammatical structures. Along with this activity, it was possible to develop an awareness of the nature of chunks and to focus on them as an important dimension of second language learning and of communicative performance. As shown, here we bookmarked all the references we used for research. Thank you so much for your attention through this presentation.